there was a movie out this year. You might have heard about it. Yeah, how many people went into the start of 2023 believing one of the biggest movies of the year would have been the one based on Barbie? Though it actually didn't take long once the previews started coming in for a lot of people to think, hot damn, this might actually work. Much of the credit goes to Margot Robbie's portrayal of the title character, which isn't surprising given that Margot Robbie is awesome in everything she does. But just as much credit should go to writer and director Greta Gerwig for being able to craft a screenplay that deconstructs the lore of the famous doll line without being visceral towards it. It became a huge hit and cash cow for Warner Brothers, and while it did have its critics, I think a lot of even them could say it could have been a lot worse. I mean, what if they took that exact same concept and turned it into, oh, I don't know, a DCOM? Okay, for what it's worth, Life Size isn't officially listed as a Disney Channel original movie. Likely because it actually debuted in March of 2000 on ABC, back when the network still aired The Wonderful World of Disney. Still, it was from back at the time when the Mouse's made-for-TV movies were still trying to get their footing, basically throwing anything at the wall to see what stuck. Amazingly, the original script for this movie was called Ken and Barbie, but was changed up on the belief that Mattel would never give Disney and the filmmakers the license. Yeah, just keep that in mind. This could have actually been the first live-action Barbie movie, so just thank those filmmakers' lack of courage to approach the mouse-eared empire. In the meantime, let's see how bad Life Size turned out to be. We open on a commercial for the Eve doll line that I have to admit is remarkably accurate toward copying the shtick of the Barbie commercials of the time.
Eve drive her Fun and Sun convertible to the mall and see what this lady can do.
And then we immediately cut to seeing how the ads aren't exactly working as the doll line is being marked down in stores everywhere. We then cut to the first of our co-stars, back when she was still innocent Lindsay Lohan. Here she plays Casey Stewart, a total tomboy out to prove herself in a man's world by playing junior high school football. And of course there is romantic tension between her and her best receiver on the team. And yet all I can think about is I'm certain this was shot on the same field that they filmed Angels in the End Zone on. Anyway, it's clear one reason she's pushing herself so much is to try to get the attention of her father, who naturally is a workaholic and keeps missing out on her games. Complicating this further is the fact that even in a DCOM, we have to have the mother be dead. And Casey is still so not over that, to the point where she's actually looking up info on resurrection magic. Aw, she's going through both her tomboy and Wiccan goth phases all at the same time. Her research draws her to the sister version of the magic shop from Buffy, which she walks into like a 15-year-old boy trying to sneak into the back room of the video store, if you know what I mean. It's here she finds the Wish version of the Necronomicon, and since she doesn't have enough to pay for it, she naturally just goes never-ending story and runs out with it. Okay, she does try to be semi-honest and leave an IOU for the money she didn't have, but still, girl, you couldn't have waited until you saved up enough? I don't think your mom's in any kind of hurry here. Just to pile things on even further, the dad's co-worker is clearly trying to hit on him, so you know that's gonna go over well with Casey. Especially since she outright crashes Casey's birthday party that the dad told her was specifically just going to be for him and Casey. I know the movie is trying to make her the opposite of the wicked stepmother and show she wants to be part of Casey's life here, but boundaries, lady! And because she knows Casey so well, of course she got her an Eve doll for a birthday present. You know the only reason I'm not posting that Simpsons cake meme is because it would be too expected. Casey does take advantage of this to go back up to her room so we can officially get Disney's version of the craft going. Which naturally makes me assume that at least 10,000 Helen Lovejoys became convinced that Disney promotes Satanism just from this movie alone. Unfortunately, Miss I Wanna Bang Your Dad interrupts everything and uses the mother's old hairbrush to brush the doll's hair, which ends up mixing the doll's hair with that of the mother's that Casey was using as part of the ritual. So when Casey is finally able to cast the incantation, you can probably guess what happens the next morning.
You can't be.
I'm Eve, and you're my special friend.
Yep, the spell results in a full come-to-life Eve played by Tyra Banks.
I must be dreaming I'm dreaming. This isn't happening.
About the only thing crazier would be if I end up driving a sentient Volkswagen Beetle!
Why do I feel like I'm in a bad horror movie?
No, but you eventually will be! So as Eve makes cheesecake poses, Casey reads that the reversal spell is in volume 2 of the series. Man, even the witches nowadays are tricking you and having to get the second issue to bleed you of all your money. Most of the movie now is Eve acting like the combo of an East European immigrant and an infant that just underwent soap opera aging, while Casey tries to figure out how to get that second book. Actually, the more I think about it, the more this thing comes off like they ripped off the plot of Big. Only if Tom Hanks had wished for his G.I. Joe to come to life instead of himself growing up. And it's clear Casey is not keen on Eve's ditzy attitude and is just looking for how to get rid of her ASAP. Okay, Casey, all you need to do is get a claymation doll that looks like Anthony Hardaway and give him the voice of Chris Rock, and this doll face will run for the hills! There really isn't much to talk about regarding the second act. It's just Tyra Banks flashing that big smile and everything, to the point where you get just as annoyed as Casey, while she constantly flirts with her dad. And no, this doesn't lead to any type of love triangle between them and the blonde co-worker, because that would be interesting! And we can't have that in a DCOM that was released before 2005! Trust me, if you watch just about any of these movies that were released at the turn of the century, you will never complain about the ham-fisted plot of High School Musical ever again! It's just really difficult to watch because neither of our two main characters are that enjoyable, as they're each extreme different sides of the same coin. Eve is the ultimate example of saccharine sweetness that just makes you want to vomit, but Casey isn't that likable either, being more jaded and grumpy than the most caustic internet critic, and what reason does she really have to want to change Eve back other than not liking her? Restoring her to doll form won't help bring her mother back. She even said that chance is now gone forever. She never even considers just convincing Eve to go someplace else so she won't bother her anymore. And you can't claim it's because changing her back is the right thing to do, because the whole thing came from Casey trying to cheat death and violate the laws of reality for her own personal desires anyway. After numerous gags where Eve discovers real life isn't as easy as her doll world, Casey finally gets a message that the Volume 2 has arrived at the bookstore. Wait a minute, when was she able to order that book again? When she went back to the store, she sent Eve in her place because she knew the owner would see her as a thief, and then Eve naively showed the owner Casey was outside, so he chased them all off anyway! For frack's sake, and I thought the plot holes in Susie Q were bad! Of course, now Casey doesn't want the book because she and Eve have all of a sudden become friends out of the blue. But this is when Eve has learned about how in trouble her doll line has become and begins to decide she has to go back in order to save everything because that's how that will work somehow. But of course, Casey doesn't have time to hear all this because she's got the championship to play for. Come on, you thought a Disney movie that involved sports wasn't gonna feature a championship game? Of course, this is where everything has to come together, as the dad walks out and risks his chance at making partner so he can finally show up at a game. And of course, Eve shows up as well, after she stopped at the bookshop. I wonder why. And of course, we all know what's gonna happen. Casey is gonna lead her team on the game-winning play with her father and her best friend watching. Wait, they lost? The Stars team lost in a Disney movie? Is that even legal? I mean, I guess it is kind of a clever twist to set up one of the movie's big messages. For the father to tell Casey that she never needed to push herself this hard in order to get his appreciation for her. That even though he wasn't always physically with her, he was always with her in spirit. And that he'll still be there for her, even though her mother no longer can be. But of course, then Casey sees that Eve has left and immediately realizes what she plans to do. And Casey just happens to know that she went to the home office of the toy company itself, because apparently that's the only place the spell will work, even though the first spell was cast in Casey's bedroom.
Casey, they're about to cancel the doll. They need me back in Sunnyvale. I know I've helped one little girl.
You know what? If it will get this movie over, I'll buy that. So Eve reverts back to being made of plastic, and this does indeed lead to the dolls becoming more popular than ever, thanks to whatever she did in her homeland, that I'm guessing we could have seen if Greta Gerwig was given this script. Casey decides it's okay to hang out with the girly girls. We never find out if she asked out that other kid on the football team. And the movie ends with Tyra Banks doing her own audition to be Disney's next music star. Sorry, Tyra, maybe if you were about 15 years younger. And that's Life Size. About as plastic and lifeless as the original doll itself. Look, I know this movie has its fan base, and maybe it is one of the better Disney TV movies of its time, but it just didn't work for me. I'd say the biggest issue with this movie is it tries to be everything at once without actually knowing what it wants to be at all. It starts like it's going to tell a message about getting over loss, but then it just drops that plot element altogether. It seems like it's trying to say that you can be anything and everything you want, but then shows that you can't be everything all at once. Even the acting somehow manages to be over the top and excessively bland at the same time. It really does feel like a beta version of what we got with this year's Barbie movie. Almost like Greta Gerwig watched this and then decided she could do this much better if she was allowed to go full force where this movie wasn't allowed to. If that's the case, I guess it worked out for everyone in the end. Be thankful you ended up getting what you got this year. And remember, if you ever get the idea to use magic to give sentient life to your childhood toys, make sure you turn them into crime-fighting ninjas. See you next time!